Okay, this week we are moving a little bit away from the very technical legal requirements of the small business law and more into the practical. So your small business is ready to hire employees. What do you do? Today we're going to talk about Hiring 101, a checklist that you need to go through when you've decided to hire for your business. The first and most important thing to do is to determine that person's classification. There is a big difference between a W-2 employee and a 1099 independent contractor. For a W-2 employee, you pay employer taxes on that person's salary. In addition, if your company offers benefits, they fall under the class that gets benefits. So, calling someone a 1099 employee is factually incorrect. You cannot do that. People paid on 1099s are not employees, and employees are not paid on 1099s. In addition, just paying someone with a 1099, not paying employer taxes on their salary, and not giving them benefits does not make them an independent contractor. You need to follow the Department of Labor's guidance on how to determine if someone can be properly classified as an independent contractor. Typically, this is a set of questions that goes through how much control you have over the person's schedule, how they do their work, what equipment they use, and what decisions they can make. Some states have additional tests. California is one in particular. Texas does not. So following the Department of Labor's guidelines is sufficient in Texas. If you have decided that this person is an employee, the next classification you have to decide is exempt versus non-exempt. And again, this is Department of Labor guidance on what that person's role is. These are questions that you should not wander around in the wilderness with. Please contact an employment attorney to help you either go over your first few employees or create a flow chart for you to go through when you're hiring. So once you've properly classified, next you need to send an offer letter, both to employees and independent contractors. This will let them know some basics about their job, their start date, where they're working, what their work hours are, who their supervisor is, their rate of pay, are they getting any benefits? And finally, if it's an employee that is not going to have an employee agreement, then you need to include an at-will statement. Texas is an at-will state, which means an employer can fire an employee for any reason or no reason at any time, as long as the reason is not discriminatory, and an employee can quit at any time for any reason. But sometimes when you have employees sign additional agreements, as we'll discuss in a minute, it can create the presumption that the at-will has changed. So you want to be clear that the at-will has not changed. After that, we get into the onboarding process. So the first thing you need to do is have that person fill out a federal I-9 form for immigration purposes. I-9s get filed at your place of business, not with the federal government, but they do need to be kept on file in a consistent manner. Next is the employee handbook, as we talked about a few weeks ago. Make sure you have a process to make sure your new hires are reading and acknowledging that they have read this handbook. Next are agreements. Sometimes if you're hiring a higher level executive, you might want to say that they have a certain year term or have some other provisions around their employment, in which case you would have them sign an employment agreement. But then for all employees, you can consider non-disclosures, non-solicitations, and other company goodwill policies. Finally, you may have some additional onboarding paperwork, such as emergency contact, or maybe a questionnaire about the person to get to know them a little bit. So all of this is part of your onboarding process. In addition to payroll, you need to have that employee fill out a W-4 if they're an employee, or a Form 1099 if they're a contractor. Decide how you will pay them. Will this be direct deposit or cut checks? And how frequently you will pay them. The Texas Workforce Commission requires that you pay your employees at least 2 times a month. So typically the options are 2 times a month, the 15th and the last day of the month, every 2 weeks, or every week. It's up to you, as long as it's no less than 2 times a month. Finally, a quick note on background checks and drug screening. These are regulated by federal law, and you need to be really careful when either you complete them yourself or hire a company to do it. I would highly suggest you talk to an employment attorney before you do, to make sure that you are staying within the bounds of the law, and that to go over if it's really a good idea to do this. But no matter what, if you've decided to complete a background screen or a drug screen, it needs to happen after your offer has been made. The federal government has stated that doing so before can lead to the presumption of discriminatory hiring practices. So if you have any questions or would like help on creating an employee onboarding workflow, feel free to reach out to me, Kelsey at SchaffnerPLLC.com, or on any of my social media at SchaffnerPLLC.